All right. How's it going, guys? Thank you so much for that, Lauren. So Cloudflare has a ton of different products, I think 90 plus at this point. But I have a couple that I want to share with you, specifically talking about securing the edge and mainly looking at our core services, that being DDoS protection as well as the WAF protections. And I'll place this right here. All right, cool. Oh. Hope that's in there. All right, cool. Can you guys still hear me? Perfect. All right, so let's get started. So let's talk about Cloudflare. So Cloudflare as a whole is a globalized cloud platform. The way we provide these services is through our backbone edge network. That network is 330, or really 320 plus different data centers and over 500 plus physical points of presence where we have all of our services running. And so what that does for us is has us to basically be a huge platform for scalability and reliability. We handle about 20 to 25% of the entire internet's traffic, and we're also able to scale our businesses to have really all of our services running on every single server. So you may hear this 100 times today, but every single service runs on every single server. And how we do that within Cloudflare is through this backbone network. All right, so let's take a step back here. So with that network as our backbone, what does that do for us? That allows us to provide products and services for our customers and our users, and that's known as the connectivity cloud. That connectivity cloud is going to be comprised of, again, our main core services, DNS, layer 7, layer 3, layer 4, even things like zero trust, as well as our developer platform, which is more focused on being serverless and allowing developers to create and deploy directly on this globalized network. What that means is we're able to package this in a neatly orange cloud or proxy for our customers that sit in front of their backbone services. So that could be your on-premises, that could be your SaaS app, that could be your public cloud or hybrid cloud or multi-cloud. Whatever you have back there, we can protect essentially. We can be the bodyguards for your different services that you want to protect via Cloudflare. All right, so let's talk about the first kind of star of the show. Let's look at DDoS protection. So a lot of us are, professionals in the industry. We already know about DDoS 101 and what happens. But a lot of us think DDoS is strictly just volumetric from the layer 7 perspective of things. But if we look at it, we can look at it in really 3 different pieces of the kind of DDoS puzzle. What we can look at is volumetric attacks, so the most popular, overwhelming your services with requests, making things sluggish, making denial of service for your valid users. But also we have underlying issues that are popular as well, that are protocol attacks. These can be things like your ready rapid attacks, as well as your sysact floods, and also application attacks. So we have applications that we use, services that we use that may be vulnerable to attacks as well for things like ransomware or ransom attacks, exploiting your actual services once users are able to get to them as well. So let's think about all 3 of these as we talk about our protections and how Cloudflare specifically tackles all 3 of those layers. All right, so historically, DDoS attacks have been handled through scrubbing centers. These scrubbing centers have been deemed fundamentally incorrect and just not proper for future development of security. The reason for that is because, typically speaking, when we talk about scrubbing centers, those are subsets of data centers that are dedicated to scrub the data. Now, let's take a scenario here. We could think of a customer, actually a vendor, having DDoS services. Let's say they have 40 data centers. Maybe 8 of those globally could be scrubbing centers. But typically speaking, if a request comes in, hits a scrubbing center, and then gets forwarded elsewhere, what's the first thought? Latency, right? That first hop turns into 2 hops, turns into 3 hops, and now you have all these services that are now being latency impacted thanks to these scrubbing centers. And even with DDoS, think of that as, again, a scalable attack. So if you're getting hit with millions of requests in second times, scrubbing centers just are not going to get the job done. So what we as Cloudflare have done is take that approach and say, hey, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to have integrated platforms for DDoS at multiple layers that are not, again, scrubber-centric or scrubber data center focused. We're going to take all that, throw it out, and now we're going to scale this for, again, every single service runs on every single server. So now you have multi-layered approaches for your DDoS prevention and protection. So how do we do that specifically? Looking at our solution set, layer 7 is covered by our WAF, So it's integrated out of the box, ready to go. No additional configurations. As soon as you proxy through Cloudflare, we're automatically on and ready to go. Layer 3 and Layer 4 are a tad bit different. Layer 4 is allowed to pretty much take your UDP, TCP servers and protect those and accelerate those with that near instant TTM and save you from additional configurations or items from a DDoS perspective. Now, Layer 3, we can literally take your entire IP space. So look at your /24s or larger, and if you don't have one of those, we can give you a leased IP that we can protect and be your BGP bodyguard. And what I mean by that is we can literally take your IP spaces, and now anytime anybody queries those IPs from the public face of the internet, they're gonna get hit by us to be our protector. So now you have not only DDoS protection, you have IP firewalling, you have the scalability across those 320 plus data centers, and also the performance and additional abilities from Cloudflare as well. So these Layer 3, 4, and 7 take all of these and integrate these into a nice stack that you can protect from many different layers when we talk about DDoS. It's not a one size fit all, but really a one solution that can fit all type of use cases. All right, so let's look at Layer 4. Layer 4, again, Spectrum. Spectrum can literally take your application, your UDP, TCP, even your Minecraft servers for all the gamers out there. We can protect those as well. So we can literally take those, scale those, again, across our network, but also provide those with those DDoS protections, IP firewalling, again, and the quick and easy ways to protect that via our Cloudflare platform. Now, Magic Transit, Layer 3, again, takes your IP spaces, /24 or larger, or leased IPs through us, can take that, protect those IP spaces, and also do the back-end networking. So let's say, for example, you come in, ingress into Cloudflare's platform via the /24 or larger. We also can have GRE tunnels, IPsec tunnels, as well as the network interconnects that can take that to the next level as well for routing purposes. So you may think, okay, now what happens to the traffic then? We can be an ingress point, and also you can be an ingress and egress point through Magic Transit as well. So many multiple layers in terms of what we can do, how we can handle it, as well as how we can tackle many flows of traffic, ingress and egress. All right, so that was a lot of information. But let's look at what we can pretty much consolidate all these talking points to. If you look at all of these different bullet points on the screen here, you see a lot of metrics, a lot of data, a lot of information. One of the main things I want to talk about in kind of that first column is that scrubbing centers thing. Back to that again. We do not do scrubbing centers. We do not have a subset of data centers, a subset of services allocated for DDoS. Everything will be scaled across that entire infrastructure, so that will be tied into all of your services. And think of those services as a completion of all of what you paid for, essentially. So we have the WAF, DDoS, rate limiting, et cetera. All those are going to be staggered approaches in that one data center as that request comes through. That provides you with all of your services up front, first hop, and out of the gate. No need to segment or break apart and increase the latency possibilities. Also, last but not least, I want to talk about is the unmetered and unlimited DDoS protection. When we talk about DDoS and kind of cap out DDoS and say, hey, what is that final talking point for DDoS specifically? It is the unmetered and unlimited and uncapped protection that you get within Cloudflare. What this means is if you as a user, you have an attacker, DDoS attacks are going to be scary, right? They come in, they infiltrate your site, your services, your network. They come in with mass scale. You don't know what to do. It's two things to have to worry about. One, how you have to mitigate it from a technical standpoint, but also from a financial standpoint. We as Cloudflare stand on the promise of that we're going to protect you from the technicals, but also from your wallet, right? You want to have to be able to sleep easy, but not have to worry about being charged or capped or locked out due to an offering from a security solution. We don't do that with DDoS. It's, again, unmetered, unlimited, uncapped, and ready to go out of the box. All right, so let's pivot to WAF. Again, think of the WAF as your foundational piece of all these services. DDoS is going to be an add-on essentially to the abilities of WAF and one subset of the stack. But I keep saying stack and keep mentioning all these different layers. What does that look like? So looking at this slide, we have a couple of different things here that we can see. We can see the DDoS protection, the very first layer. We can see rate limiting. We can see managed rules. We can see sensitive data detection. All these cool pieces and elements, again, make up the WAF. The WAF is where I tell all of our users to start. You can start with simple ACL, IP access rules, very simple, or you can even beef it up to say, hey, I want to have more advanced features, rate limiting, I want to have bot protection, I want to have API security. I can really use this as pivot points to now say, I can now flex for more difficult users and more convoluted attackers that are out there in the world. And with our WAF solution, we want to make it as easy as possible. World-class offerings essentially through our dashboard, our single pane of glass, will allow you to have these WAF functionalities at your fingertips. So you can easily go into a managed rule, turn it off, turn it off. You can turn it on, turn it off. You can go into your custom rules, turn it on, turn it off. You can go into your rate limit. You can put in specific metrics for your rate limiting. All these things are going to be parts of the WAF and configurable whenever you need them to be. But out of the box, you can turn on a couple toggle switches and not have to worry about configuring either. So we have both flavors for you to get our services in your environment. All right, so looking at the top, I'll say 5 pieces of our WAF, they start with our managed services. Out of the box, I tell every single user of Cloudflare, the most important thing you could do is use our managed services. If you're not technical, if you're technical, doesn't matter. Managed services are going to be really helpful for you to say, hey, I want to get up on the platform. As soon as I bring my DNS over to Cloudflare, I turn on that big orange button to say I want to proxy through Cloudflare. From that point on, I say, hey, go ahead and turn on the managed rule sets. These managed rule sets are going to be things like the Cloudflare managed rule set. That managed rule set is going to be one-to-one handpicked from our threat intelligence engineers. We have a dedicated boots on the ground team that goes out and looks for the next log4j, the next CVE out there that nobody knows about, the next even CrowdStrike attack, right? These all are elements that we're looking for as Cloudflare, and our engineers are going out to say, hey, what can we proactively do and provide for our customers to be not impacted by zero-day attacks? We also have machine learning. So of course, AI, to Matt's point earlier, we have the ability to leverage AI as well as machine learning for models to give us more strengths and analytics for anomalous behavior, as well as being able to detect any type of volumetric attacks or scaled attacks across different regions that don't make sense, or even reverse proxies that may be trying to trigger or spoof actual users. We also have things like the OAuth core rule set. That rule set is going to be leveraging the top 10, top 25 industry standard for any type of firewalling. So if you used any other vendor, the AWSs of the world, you name it essentially, we have you leverage the OAuth core rule set. OAuth specifically is going to be something that's outlined as a framework for us to use to protect you from the most popular attacks. And then of course we have things like the credentials check, as well as the account takeovers. So if you're ever using something like an e-commerce site, we can leverage the account takeover metrics to say, hey, account takeover is going to ID basically if there are any volumes of failed logins or failed registrations, or even an increase in, let's say, a payment form or documentation that may be highly susceptible to credential stuffing. And then of course, last but not least, we have sensitive data detection. Little self-explanatory, but that will allow you to have PII protections for financials, for healthcare, for any other sensitive data, even API tokens and keys. We're taking all those secrets and now being able to pull down those metrics for you to be safe and secure. All right, and zero-day vulnerabilities. Of course, again, I just touched on that, but one thing I want to talk about here and really drive home is the 30 days. 30 days on average is when the actual attacks are being published from the attacker. So let's just be hypothetical for a second. Let's say you guys have been attacked and it's been 30 days, right? You're like, hey, I see a business impacting thing that's going on. We're seeing a nagging attack in our environment. I can't put my finger on it. What's going on, right? Just imagine 30 days of being confused about what's going on in your environment. That could be 30 days of no sales, 30 days of no services. That could be 30 days of your servers being completely down. So let's take, again, the CrowdStrike example. That was a very short period in the grand scheme of things, but in the sense of an attack, that was catastrophic. 30 days is very unacceptable for customers, users, as well as your consumers of the services rendered from Cloudflare, because 30 days is a very, very long time for attackers to scale, as well as move horizontally and vertically in your environment. This is exactly what we want to prevent you and protect you from within Cloudflare's zero-day vulnerabilities protection. How we do that specifically can be kind of ironed out with these 4 main pieces. Again, the managed rule set, again, number 1 item I recommend, Cloudflare 101, DNS, set it up. Managed rule set is going to be the strong number 2 for our WAF for you to have easy kind of set and forget type of methodology. The machine learning as well for, of course, the anomalous detection and on-the-fly learning that you as the human do not have to keep up with. And then, of course, the attack scores. So attack scores is a little bit more granular, but technically we're able to pull out requests and give them scores as well. We can say, hey, is this tied to a cross-site scripting attack? Is this tied to SQL injection? Is this malicious? Is this kind of anomalous to the sense of breaking out from your typical foundation of traffic that we see in your environment? All these things come together and give you, again, a full understanding of the story that goes into our firewalling abilities, but also, again, last but not least, you're leveraging our globalized network. So not only are you now scaling your one server to now being 320 technically, you're now scaling your protections in terms of now you can use all these services and get that same consistency across the board for all of your users. All right, so let's talk about a kind of a bonus item, but also my favorite part to kind of counteract the DDoS protections. Within DDoS, typically speaking, DDoS is going to look for very high volumetric attacks, as well as network layer and also protocols. But let's say, for example, you have that one user, that one guy that sends you 100 requests in an hour. He's just kind of slowing down your server just a little bit to use up enough resources to make you annoyed. You put in your firewall rule, and you're still trying to track him down. How do we stop that, right? These low volume attacks. We do that through the advanced rate limiting offering. And the reason is because, typically speaking, from a legacy standpoint, IP firewalling is no longer enough. IPs can be tied to proxies. They can be tied to different privacy agents. These could be natted IPs. These could be even spoofed, right? These could be really changed and kind of configured to not be one reliable fail-safe. And so when we talk about rate limiting and how to also counteract that, advanced rate limiting has many different ways that we can pretty much break out different pieces away from just the IP address for you to have a more consolidated effort in terms of now building reliable rules from a firewalling perspective. So advanced rate limiting will, one, allow you to now have scalability to say, hey, we want to have specific metrics and data that we want to create rate limiting rules for. I may not want to take a sledgehammer and just do an all or nothing block for my firewall. I may want to challenge users. I may want to log attackers or over abuse. I may want to essentially throttle users. I may want to even block them out or lock them out from my services for a given period of time if I detect abuse. So what rate limiting does is it gives you all those elements, and also too, it gives you an underlying ability to add in API protections. So what I mean by that is we can literally use advanced rate limiting to now protect your API endpoints through the headers, the cookies, the paths, even the direct URLs of those APIs to extend out more protections from a WAF perspective. All right, so one of my final slides here is that essentially what we're doing with advanced rate limiting is very similar to the WAF. The WAF itself is going to allow you to basically take all of what we talked about with the firewall, the rate limiting rules, the core OAuth threats, the sensitive data, all that stuff is now going to be scalable for a more fine-tooth comb approach. So let's say, for example, with the first item here, we want to be able to throttle excessive users. In most cases, we don't want to outright block users. We may be blocking valid users. We may be blocking valid use cases or valid services or even scripts that may be essential to our business. This throttling functionality will allow you to essentially be more of a grace period for these abusers. We may want to throttle it beyond a specific use case for my services on the back end. I may want to save my resources or harness in pretty much preventative measures for me not to have pay additional origin costs, for example. The list goes on. This is where advanced rate limiting will come into play, because now we're not just leaning on IPs or the black and white version of just essentially saying, hey, we're going to just take an all or nothing approach to firewalling. There are many different ways we can take this, and basically what this allows us to do is now have brute force protection. What that can allow me to do is essentially allow a runway to say, hey, if we have X number that is being abused, I now have a valid output for that abuser, versus just outright blocking, potentially locking out valid users. And so when I talk about kind of counteracting DDoS, think of it as a two-part story, a Batman and Robin. Batman will be your commonly known DDoS protector and preventer, but also Robin will be right there with advanced rate limiting to give you those lower level stage 2 attacks that may be more convoluted, but also harder to track because they're going to be under the radar attacks that'll be taking away your resources. So with that all kind of in mind, All these can be tied together with the DDoS protections as well as your mitigation cycles, but also we can use these to, again, get both a comprehensive high-level catch-all with DDoS, but then a lower-level advanced rate limiting cycle through of protections for all of our services to give you a full-blown end-to-end WAF solution that can leverage all of our services within Cloudflare. So I'll end there, and I'll leave a couple minutes here. I know I have a couple minutes left for any questions, but aside from that, that's our layer 3, 4, 7 DDoS protection and WAF. Great. Any questions? Yes.
When you're talking about identifying PII, are you doing that like real time, like through network traffic? So at that point, it's unencrypted because you guys are encrypting on both ends?
Correct. Yep. So yes, we are inspecting PII. We're able to essentially inspect the packets, and it's actually a closed vacuum to the sense of we actually have kind of two-layered approaches. So if we see it in the packet, we'll flag it through the managed rule or the rule set. But even in the dashboard, it'll still be hidden effectively. But we do have another layer where we can do payload inspection to unencrypt those beyond kind of the typical logging to give you like key access to say, hey, what was actually in that rule that got triggered? Insert your keys, get authenticated, and then you actually see what's in the logs as well.
I got a question.
Yes.
Do it matter which plan you got? Like, do it work for all the plans, whether it's free or business enterprise?
Yep, so out of the box, all of our users get the layer 7 DDoS protections, and we give you a managed version of layer 3 and 4. So out of the box, you get those for free. They're integrated for all of our users, and there's, traditionally speaking, there's no way to like essentially have to configure it. So again, as soon as you proxy it, there's no like DDoS button you have to press. It'll automatically be packaged already on. Now, when we talk about like kind of the paywall side of things, that'll be more geared towards like enterprise spectrum, enterprise magic transit, just because we're talking about actual scales of protecting IP spaces and things of that nature. So that obviously is enterprise ready, but for the most part, all of our users free all the way up to enterprise get DDoS out the box. All right, any other questions?
Can you explain magic transport?
Yeah, so magic transit basically is going to be, so it's kind of two ways to look at it. So think of it, one, as an IP protector. So IP networks are going to be your /24 blocks or larger. And effectively what we do is, one, we get like, the LOAs, all that stuff on the kind of admin side to say, hey, you guys own the IP spaces. We now are going to be owning that on your behalf. So we're going to do BGP announcements, BGP propagation, and the kind of networking side of things for you from that perspective. So if you were to do that, then now things will come into Magic Transit. Magic Transit, inside of Magic Transit, has its own routing as well as its kind of interconnects and cycles and tunnels to say, hey, this next hop will be XYZ. This next hop will be whatever IP you would like. So you can do internal routing inside of Magic Transit as well. So think of it as a high-level IP firewall that also can ingest actual network spaces.
I use you guys, and I have a translation device where if someone comes to my website with IPv4, well, I don't have IPv4 on my website, I have IPv6, and you guys do the translation for me. Does that slow me down or speed me up because IPv6 is faster, or it's about even?
It's about even, and yeah, we're fully dual stack, of course, anyway. But yeah, I say it's pretty even, and also too in terms of our performance part of it, I'll say on average we're really sub-millisecond speeds across the board. I mean, 4 or 6, honestly. But the kind of huge benefit you'll get is like the location part of it, right? So with the globalized platform, the very first hop, even here in Raleigh, will hit Durham, right? So it's like even if it's kind of negligible when you talk about like pure IP networking speed at that point. So it'll be negligible for your users whenever they're using our services.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I got one more question. So what if we set it up as like a partial CNAME setup? Will it still be able to get like these protections right here? Would be something different or?
No, I like your question too. So great question. So partial CNAME, to let you guys know, is so we do have full and partial CNAME. Full is where we're your authoritative server. We take all of your records, put them into Cloudflare. We're now your DNS provider, basically, end to end. Partial CNAME is where we can take partial well, we can take CNAMEs from your root, let's say out in GoDaddy, somewhere else, Route 53, wherever the case may be. We can CNAME records over to Cloudflare specifically for those protections. So to your question, they still get the same protections as well. So if I CNAME, for example, my www of my top level domain in Cloudflare, protected. If I CNAME over my dev.example.com, protected, right? So those all will be protected via Cloudflare. And the way we do that is there's a matching CNAME record that goes on your third-party authoritative DNS that basically will run it through our Cloudflare proxy because it'll be appended with .cloudflare.cdn.com. Mm-hmm. All right, any other questions?
I have to give you some credit. I'm not getting paid, don't have a financial relationship with Cloudflare. Your DNS is freaking fantastic. Yeah.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I think it's an awesome service. I mean, I could sell this stuff to you guys all day, but I'll say from our heart, I think it's just awesome that we have the scalability for the network as well as, again, DNS is just being very performant. And typically speaking, I appreciate that because now it takes your business, your 2 servers, and now makes it a massive scale, ready to go, reachable application from anywhere. So thank you for that. All right. Anything else? All right, cool. Well, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.